Not much in my background worth mentioning. Average man with average desires, loving wife, good job, and kids. My beautiful wife Helen had similar interests, or so I thought. My story is about when I found out my wife, and I did not share as many interests as I thought. It started one dark and stormy night. Not really. I've just always wanted to write that in a story. As I was saying, it started one night when I came home from work. My wife Helen was sitting on the living room couch watching TV. She turned it off as I came in. I sniffed and did not smell anything from the kitchen. "What's up? You want to go out tonight?" I asked. "Please tell me you didn't ask Kelsey. I can't take another crap meal. Kelsey is over at your mother's. I wanted to talk to you without being disturbed," she replied. She had a playful tone in her voice, so I assumed something pleasant was about to happen. Helen continued, "I know I'm not supposed to talk about the role-playing game, but I just want you to know how much I enjoy it. I want us to bring what we do on Wednesdays into our bedroom more often. What do you say, cowboy?" She lifted her skirt to give me a suggestive glimpse. I didn't know what to say other than, "What role-playing game?" "Oh, I know you want to pretend to keep things secret to enhance the excitement, but you've spoiled me. I want more than once a week for our special loving. I do have one question I'm dying to ask. How do you make your tool seem bigger during our times together? Is it just the excitement?" I was overwhelmed with a sense of intense unease. "Helen, I'm clueless about any role-playing game on Wednesdays, and definitely don't know any method to enhance my manhood. Please explain what on earth you're referring to." Helen began to look shocked as well. "You know, our Wednesdays at the Marcus Inn and Suites. Does that ring a bell?" I shook my head. "Oh my God. You emailed me about 6 weeks ago, saying that you figured a way to add excitement to our relationship. You told me to go to room 301 at the Marcus Inn. I was to undress, put on the mask lying on the nightstand, and lie on the bed. I was not to move, even when you came in and secured me to the bed after you were intimate with me. You would release me and leave. I was not to remove my mask until you had left. We were supposed to pretend we were having a secret rendezvous, keeping it hidden from each other's spouse. It was supposed to make our experiences much more thrilling. You said absolutely no talking about it was allowed during the week. I couldn't believe how much of a difference this game made. It has been wonderful. We have been intimate in several different ways than we ever have before. Like I said, you felt different. I thought it was because of the special excitement we were creating from imagining another lover. Oh, Carl, please tell me that it was you." Tears were coming to her eyes. "I'm sorry, Helen. I've never been to the Marcus with you or anyone else." "You mean I've been intimate 6 times with someone other than my husband?" She ran to the bathroom and got sick. After she cleaned up, she came back into the living room, where I still sat in complete shock. "Carl, you've got to forgive me. I honestly thought it was you. I have been so happy. Now I feel like an idiot. Someone has tricked me. Shit. That's why he never talked to me in the room. He wanted me to keep thinking it was you. Okay. Now please tell me you forgive me." Full-blown sobbing was going on. I stammered in response. "I don't know what to say. It just seems so bizarre. How could anyone have done that to us? And why? How could you have been with him 6 times and not noticed? It was not me. I thought it was you. You changed your approach. But that was the point of role-playing, to try something new, more alluring than before. I believed he was just a more charming aspect of you. Well, maybe you need to find out who this guy who is so much better than me in bed so you can be his wife," I said, anger creeping into my voice. "Don't use that attitude with me, Buster. I want to find the guy, all right. I want him to pay for violating me. Do you understand that?" In effect, he violated me. I calmed down. "I'm sorry, Helen. I was not looking at it enough from your viewpoint. Let's try to look at this logically, if we can. Who would want to do something this mean to us? It would need to be someone who really hates me, you or us. Both. Or it could be someone who has been secretly in love with you and figured out a way to get to have sex with you without having to convince you to cheat on your husband. Helen shivered all over. It gives me the creeps to think there might be someone out there who spends every night fantasizing about me. You mean other than me? I tried to lighten the mood but failed. Asshole, you weren't assaulted. Helen snapped. I'm sorry. Okay. Where did the email come from? I wish I had saved them now. You. I mean, whoever sent them said to delete the message they were sent from your office. Email. That means it has to be someone who has access to my computer. I tend to leave it on when I only leave my desk for a short time. Trouble is, that gives us dozens of possibilities. Does he keep emailing you? I asked Helen. Yes. He usually confirms our session before each time, suggesting what's to come. He said he wanted the anticipation to build beforehand. I had to delete that email, and I wasn't allowed to respond. Now I understand why. Did it excite you? I inquired. Yes, but remember, I thought it was you I would be intimate with. Darn it, Carl, I wasn't envisioning being with another man. I was envisioning being with you. Has he emailed about this coming Wednesday? No, not yet. I intend to give him a piece of my mind. I thought you were not to email him back. He gave me a phone number to leave a message if I ever had to cancel. I had to leave a message on it once. Okay, don't do anything yet. Let me know when he emails again. There was no intimacy in the Turner household that night, or for the next several nights. I was reluctant to be close to someone who had just been with another. Helen said she was concerned that thoughts of her recent encounter might make her feel unfaithful, spoiling the moment. We both agreed we needed to get tested for STDs. On Monday, Helen received an email from her secret admirer. She shared the message with me when I arrived home from my job. He confirmed that he was available this Wednesday. He playfully hinted that he would convince her to explore a new intimate experience. Helen confided in me that she was open to experimenting with different aspects of role-playing. Until recently, she had thought this particular act was too much for her. I suggested she call him and leave a hint that he might get his wish. I wanted to ensure his attendance, so on Tuesday afternoon I went to the marquee and talked to the desk clerk. I confirmed he would be on duty the next day. He was. I asked him what it would take to get entry into the room my wife would be coming to tomorrow. He was not surprised, since it had been obvious to him that the woman and man who used the same room every week were not married. His response was $200. I agreed. Wednesday came, and we were ready to catch the man. Helen went in the room and did as usual. Several minutes later, I saw the man enter the room. It was Richie Hammond, the notorious flirt of our office. He hit on every woman in the office, married or not. Of course, he was married with 2 kids. Betraying his family was obviously not considered an obstacle to him. He had looked at the picture of my wife on my desk and mentioned several times about how fortunate I was to have such an attractive wife. I always wanted to clean the air after every time he came by my office. I went to the desk clerk to get my copy of the room key. He wouldn't let me have it. Man, I'm scared I will lose my job. The boss jumped all the desk clerks about letting anyone in except the person who paid. Afternoon delights is a big part of our business. Sorry, man, he said. I was fuming. I was thinking about what might be going on in the room. Helen was supposed to act the same thing she normally did, and I would break in before much could happen. I became frantic. Finally, I threatened, if you don't give me a key, I will kick the door in and call the police. Do you think your boss wants to deal with that? I had the key, but it was several minutes after I was supposed to have entered the room. When I entered, Richie was behind her, engaged in an intimate act. He paused. Helen, still unaware of my presence, pleaded for him to proceed, as she was close to the peak of her pleasure. Richie resumed. I intervened, pulling him away by his hair. Helen appeared let down until I released her and removed her blindfold. Then she began to cry. I instructed her to get dressed. Richie sat in one of the chairs, appearing completely at ease. Well, at least I got to be with her before you did, he said. I moved toward him, anger in my gaze. He simply gestured to the corner where a camera was mounted on a tripod. Carl, you don't want to harm me. I have recordings of every session your wife and I have had. Do you really want me to share those? I could potentially sell them, or even distribute them to your friends and family at no cost. Or we can maintain the status quo. I see her once a week, and you have her the rest of the time. You son of a bitch, you will give us the videos, and you will never see my wife again. Or what? Or I will. I will. Can't think of anything that won't embarrass you or tarnish your wife's reputation, can you? I'll kill you, I shouted. Richie was laughing. Now, you would leave your wife and daughter without a husband and father, and no means of support. Yeah, right. Well, I'm kind of tired of her now that I've been with her. Tell you what, I'll do. I'll not initiate contact with her ever again. Of course, if she wants to call me, then that's another matter. A wide grin crossed his face. Helen got her clothes on, and we left. She was silent. On the way home, she ran into the house and went upstairs for a long shower. I waited downstairs. When she came downstairs, she suggested we talk after supper. It was time to pick up Kelsey now. Dinner was quiet, except for Kelsey telling about her day. She went to bed at 8 o'clock. We went to the kitchen table about 8:30 to make sure our daughter was asleep. Helen asked, "What are we going to do now?" I'm not really sure. If there were some way to get the videos, that would solve a lot of our problems. I can't see any way other than burglary at this point. But who could we get to do that? If we go to the police, he will just say you consented. He has videos that will show you liked it. Even if he gets arrested, the videos would be released. We're screwed. Do you have any ideas? No, I think we're over a barrel. We might as well try to put the whole thing in the rearview mirror and go on with our lives. Are you all right with that? No revenge. I'm afraid anything we do will just make things worse. Let's drop it. If we never talk about it again, it will be too soon for me. She left and went to bed as usual. Lately, I did not join her. A couple of months had gone by. Helen was pleasant and completed all her normal household chores and childcare duties. We tended not to talk about anything around the house except as it related to Kelsey's appointments or phone messages. Our sex life was on life support. At the office, I tried to avoid Richie whenever he glanced at me. He had the smirk of a man who had cuckolded me. Just another twist in the knife in my back. God, how I wanted to wipe that smirk off with my fist. I never stopped trying to figure out how to get back at him. And I never stopped falling short of my goal. In the middle of one of my revenge daydreams, I got a call. It was the desk clerk from the Marquee. "What do you want?" I snapped. "Hey man, don't get huffy with me. I got some info that might be of value to you. You interested?" "I have no idea. What could you have that would interest me now?" "How about your wife and that Richie fellow are back to their old tricks?" I tried to sound emotionless as my gut was churning. I find it hard to believe that she hates him. And why would he want to go back to the Marquee when he got busted there? I ain't at the Marquee anymore. I work at the Red Roof now over on Kingston Road. When I saw them, I asked the desk clerk I was replacing about them. He said they had been coming regularly for about a month. Every Wednesday at the same time. If you want proof, I can get it for, say, $500. Get lost in my wife too, I growled, and hung up. I wanted to cry, but I was too angry. Richie had said he would continue if my wife called him. I recalled her remarks about how much she had appreciated his company. We had never gone this long without intimacy before, and Helen didn't seem to be missing it. Clearly, she wasn't. The only action I could think to take was to leave. I gathered the essentials I usually took for a 3-day business trip. I headed for the nearest motel that wasn't the Marquee or the Red Roof and had a bar. I checked into the Holiday Inn Express and headed for the bar. I didn't drink much, so I asked for the bartender to suggest something. He gave me a Long Island tea. At first, It seemed too weak. But my opinion changed by round 2. There was a hell of a delayed buzz. I was well on my way to drowning in my sorrows when I got a tap on my shoulder. "Can I join you, Cal? I need to cry in my beer too." I saw a tall woman with long, wavy, coal-black hair. She was gorgeous. I answered, "Excuse me, do I know you, Joan?" "Richie's wife. At least for the time being. We met at last year's Christmas party." I looked again. How could I have forgotten such a beautiful woman? Did I just say that out loud? Joan laughed. "Thank you. I believe you meant that as a compliment." "How did you? Why did you? Are you always so articulate?" "Let me explain. I found out today about Richie's latest adventure with your wife. I paid the desk clerk who called me $500 for proof. I finally had enough. He's promised several times to stop his indiscretions, but I don't think he can help it. As for running into you, it was just a coincidence. I wanted to get out of the house and clear my head. My mother has my 2 kids. When I saw you, I remembered you from the Christmas party. The look on your face seemed to match what I was feeling, so I invited myself over. If you would rather be alone." No, please join me. It's just that I'm so surprised. I think we probably have a lot in common to talk about. What are you drinking?" "What do you have?" "Long Island tea. I really enjoy those. My first intimate experience was with a Long Island tea." "Go ahead and order one for me, and make it a double." We spent several hours talking and drinking. She was easy to talk to, and had a great, lively sense of humor. I was very attracted to her. Finally, she said, "Well, it's time for us to either get back at our exes or go to sleep alone. What's your choice? As much as I would like to be intimate with you, I don't think I could do it well enough for it to be worthy of a woman as special as you." That is the nicest put-down I have ever had. Believe me, it wasn't meant to be a put-down, and I really hate to miss the opportunity if we ever become intimate. I would want it to be when I'm at my best. Even then, I'd worry if I was good enough for you. Damn it, I haven't even put out the trash, and I think I'm falling in love again. I should know better than to drink lattes. I offered, "What if we have a late breakfast together tomorrow? I could call you, or if you get up. I have a suggestion. What if we share a bed so we will know when the other is awake?" "You mean sleep together or sleep together?" Sleep is all I had in mind. However, I'm open to sharing some warmth. I'd rather not spend the night alone. "Works for me. Your room or mine?" I got a suite. I'm using his credit card. He owes me. I brought some of my stuff to her suite. After taking care of nighttime bathroom duties, we got into bed. Despite both being naked and the hugging and light kissing, we went to sleep in just a few minutes. She woke up first and nudged me in the ribs. "Wake up, or I'll have to resort to more persuasive measures." I longed for her intimate kiss, yet hesitated to act on infidelity. Despite our partner's betrayals, the notion struck me that pursuing this relationship might lead to indulging in too much Long Island tea at breakfast at the Waffle House next door. We got serious about our marriages, that is. We both wanted to be rid of our spouses, and we both wanted revenge. The problem seemed to be how we could divorce them without losing as much or more than them in the process. Joan spoke. "I really don't want to go back to that house. It's in his name only. Anyway, I would be happy just to go off somewhere with the kids and forget about him." "How could you afford to do that? Wouldn't he come after the kids?" "Are you?" "My family has money. When I called them last night, they said they would put $100,000 in my private account to give me and the kids a start somewhere else and start the divorce process. Frankly, I would rather just take off and let him worry about the divorce." "Aren't your kids in school? Wouldn't they miss their father?" "No. I'm homeschooling, and no. He only agreed to have kids because it was a condition to marry me. I had my tubes tied after the second one. I doubt they would miss him very much. I'm sure he won't. He doesn't spend much time with them, and always whines if he is ever asked to sit with them while I run out somewhere. I've known for quite a while. He probably just married me for my money. I don't care. I got 2 wonderful girls out of our marriage. My parents have not been in a rush to give me and my brother any money before they did, but they did help us with the deposit on our house and things like that. They don't particularly like Richie. I related. I hadn't really thought of just leaving. Like you, I don't particularly want to return to my house. Both of our names are on the mortgage, though Helen and Kelsey have never been especially close. Kelsey was an oops child. I think Helen resented putting her career on hold for a few years. Kelsey has always been a daddy's girl. I think Helen loves her, but I don't think she would take extraordinary actions to get her back. She knows I will take good care of her. You know, the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of just leaving. Joan questioned me if it seems the best option for both of us is to just leave our spouses rather than hassling with a divorce. The question is, do we do it together? She looked into my eyes, and it may have been wishful thinking on my part. I believe I could see love in her eyes. 24 hours, not quite love at first sight, but pretty damn close. It makes no sense. But yes, I would go with you if I could bring my daughter. I can't believe I'm saying this. I have never done anything this impulsive and this important at the same time. I do have one question. Where would we go? Would we tell anyone where we were going? That's 2 questions, but I'm not counting. We need to ask each other every question we can come up with. Here's my tentative plan. I have an Aunt Barbara who has a large cabin on Lake Champlain that she is not able to live in anymore because of problems related to her having MS. Last I heard, she was thinking of fixing it up for sale. If that is available, it would be ideal, isolated with plenty of rooms for the kids and us. The setting is National Geographic magazine picture-worthy. It turned out the cabin was available for the next several days. I stayed at the hotel. I ignored messages from Helen after I knew she had figured out that I was aware about her return to her Wednesday trysts with Richie. I left one message. I have to get away for a while. I went to my place of work and resigned. My boss was upset but was also understanding of my situation, having been burned in a divorce before himself. He asked if his firing Richie would cause any problems in my plans for Helen. Mine was not the first complaint about him. I said, "Fire away." I did ask that he wait until I was ready to leave. I went by our bank and withdrew almost all of the money from our joint assets. I used most of it to pay off the rest of the mortgage. In spite of her betrayal, I couldn't bring myself to take all our money and assets. We both contributed to the household expenses. By giving her the house, Helen would come out about the same financially as she would in a 50-50 divorce split. If she needed money, she could always sell the house. I signed away my interest in the house to make it easier for her. Next, I canceled the automatic payment of utilities and insurances. Health insurance would stop with my leaving work. I changed my life insurance beneficiary in trust to Kelsey. At night, Joan and I would talk about what we needed to do to hide effectively, how to hurt our children the least, and what future we might have together. We continued to avoid having sex. There was enough emotion flowing as it was. We didn't need our decision to leave our spouses based on sex between us. I'm not sure which of us was the most disappointed. By the 3rd day, we had concluded to go ahead with our escape plan. The next day, I went to the house while Helen was at work and took what I thought was most needed by Kelsey and a couple more of my things. I thought of leaving a note. All I could come up with was, "I hope sex with him was worth it." And I also left my wedding ring. My final stop of the day was Kelsey's school. I told the school that Kelsey had a doctor's appointment, and I apologized for not letting them know earlier. I told Kelsey that we were going on a vacation trip. Kelsey asked about Mommy coming. I said, "Not this trip." She surprised me and said, "Good. She's no fun sometimes." Joan picked up her kids from her mother's house after they got home from school. By 5 o'clock, we were on the road and Barb welcomed us to live in the lake cabin. She had just finished renovating it and was having seller's remorse at selling it. Lucky for us, we took 2 vehicles. Kelsey started out riding with me, But after a few stops where the three girls became acquainted, they took turns, all riding with me or all riding with Joan. By the time we got to the log cabin, Joan and I had lost the master bedroom. The girls would not agree to splitting up the newly formed trio. Luckily, one of the guest bedrooms was next to the second bathroom and suited Joan and me just fine. One of Joan's kids asked why Joan and I were sharing a bedroom when one bedroom had no one in it. Joan told her that the bedroom we were in was the adults' bedroom. Her oldest daughter replied that she thought adults usually had their own room. Kelsey agreed. Both had seen that their parents had not spent many nights together in the last few months. Once the thrill of the day faded, the children went to sleep. They were fast asleep within minutes, all three sharing the same bed. Luckily, it was a king-sized one. Joan and I enjoyed a glass of wine together. Barbara had filled the little wine cabinet as a welcoming gift for us. Joan gave a mischievous grin. Now that we've moved on from our previous partners, are you prepared to show your affection? Oh no, she recalled my words from that night at the Holiday Inn Express. I'm worried I might have raised your expectations too much regarding my intimacy skills. My ex-wife seemed to be let down in that area. If she was charmed by my worthless ex-husband, I doubt her decision-making in romantic matters or any other area. Moreover, I intend to affect your performance significantly. I trust you have no issue with assertive partners. My arousal was immediate in response to her suggestion. We went to the bedroom and shared an intimate moment. It was a unique experience with Joan, distinct from my past with Helen. Joan had a different scent, touch, and sound. Her reactions were notably different as well. I was concerned for a moment until she expressed her amazement and asked for more. Impressively, I was able to oblige multiple times that night, setting a personal record. Joan's pleasure was evident, though I couldn't keep track of the number of times Joan remarked before we drifted off to sleep. I guess that settles our compatibility. We cuddled close. Recalling her words the next morning, we enjoyed shopping so we could stock the cabin with a few things we wanted to eat, and of course, a lot of the food that the kids would eat. I was happy to do frequent grilling as long as the weather allowed. We were not hurting for money, as Joan still had most of her money from her parents, and the little bit I had left after paying off the mortgage. No one but Aunt Barb knew where we were. Once she heard our stories, she had no problem being willing to keep our secret, even from Joan's parents. Time went on, and Joan became the homeschool teacher for all three children. I got a job as a handyman. I confess, I learned as I went. The girls' questions about or wishes to see my wife or her husband became less and less as the months went by. Soon, all of the girls were calling us Mom and Dad. All the kids loved the lake and surrounding wetlands and forest. It was almost like living in the city, had held their spirit in while living in the outdoors, allowed them to release their inner souls. Our nearest neighbor, Greta, had raised her family in this environment and was happy to give advice to us. We needed it. She started as a friend, but gradually she became a grandmother figure to our kids. We asked her not to question the kids about their parents, as there had been a nasty divorce for both of us. She agreed. Periodically, Joan and I talked about making contact with our former lives. We feared that any contact might lead someone to us. Besides Helen and Richie, we worried about the police, perhaps wanting us for kidnapping and slash or fraud, for avoiding illegal divorce and distribution of funds. We settled on using the internet as being the safer way to reach out. Greta agreed to have the internet installed at her house if we agreed to teach her how to use it. She wanted to email her own grandkids. Being with our kids made her miss hers more than before. We debated on telling Greta our true story. So far, we hadn't. Things were going so well. We were afraid to rock the boat. It took another month for Greta to get a satellite TV set up with Wi-Fi. We showed her how to use email and Skype. Getting to see her grandkids live was special to her. One day, while she took the girls out on the lake, we went to the internet for information. We found a notice of the sale of my old house. Helen must have needed the money. After we were gone a year, Notices of a divorce based on abandonment were posted for both Helen and Richie, and Barbara told Joan that her parents had sent an annual Christmas summary of the year. Joan's mother had enclosed a personal note to Barb since she knew her daughter and Barb were close. Barb suspected Joan's mother had figured out she knew where Joan was. The message was a warning to Barbara. Helen had not given up on finding Carl. She had hired a private investigator who had visited Joan's parents. The PI knew of, and Barbara. She told her to expect someone snooping around soon. She hadn't called because she feared her calls might be monitored. Joan's mother watched a lot of spy movies. Barbara advised Cal and Joan, "Get moving. We didn't have enough money to make a big move unless we were sure of getting more money." Soon after moving, rather than ask Joan's parents for more help, I decided to take the chance and email my old boss for an idea of where to look for a job. He replied that a private investigator had contacted him. My boss had told him he was pissed off. I gave no notice, and he didn't care where I was. Then my old boss asked me if I liked Flagstaff, Arizona. I said I didn't know, as I had never even been near there. He said there was an opening for a branch manager there. He agreed to set up an interview and assured me I would get the job. I asked how he could guarantee that. He said the person who was hiring was his brother, who had already tried to hire away 2 of the staff in my old office. We headed for Flagstaff on the way. I was afraid that my becoming an employee would leave a trail that a good PI would be able to find. I had an idea just before we crossed into Arizona. We rented a hotel room with a double bed and let the girls swim in the pool. Joan did her best to calm my nerves about the interview as my former boss had promised. His brother mostly wanted to know how soon I could start. I told him that I needed to form an LLC, a name. My corporation is something other than my name. I told him instead of an employee, he would be retaining the services of my corporation. Personal service contracts were usually less costly than an employee, so he agreed. We found a house in the desert. The outdoors was very different here, but the kids adapted quickly. I think they were glad to escape the intense winter weather possible where we had come from. It took a couple of months for the kids to adjust, and a couple more before Joan, and I felt safe again. On that fateful night, Joan and I were turning out lights to prepare to go to bed when there was a knock at the door. At this hour, with no close neighbors, I was suspicious. I picked up my .22 rifle and loaded it carefully. I peered through the peephole and saw who it was. Helen. Tons of mixed emotions ran through my brain. My heart pounded. My stomach became nauseous. I called out to Joan that we had company. I invited Helen in just as Joan was entering the room. "I assume this is Helen." I nodded. Helen jumped right in. "I assume the kids are asleep. I waited until you started turning off lights. I don't want to disturb them." "Yes. They've been asleep for about half an hour." "Good. You're not easy to find." She chuckled. "Let's ease the tension right away. I'm not here to stir up trouble." After you 2 left and Richie was out of work, he moved in with me. Living with him, I quickly realized I had made a poor trade. I won't lie. The physical attraction was there, and he had his moments. But a couple living together needs more than that. I set a deadline for him to find work and contribute to the bills. He didn't take me seriously until a sheriff's deputy arrived and gave him the choice to leave or face arrest. I heard he's working in a different town now. As far as my life, I bounced back with the help of a therapist. Since then, I have been able to support myself pretty well, emotionally and financially. Private investigators aren't cheap. I filed for a divorce after a year, because by then I knew I had lost you and Kelsey, as much as I wished I had behaved differently. I knew I needed to move on. By filing under abandonment, I could set the terms of the divorce settlement. I was able to take what little there was left of your stuff. I honestly feel I have moved on. In fact, there's a man I am dating that I have hopes for. At the very least, I'm sure I won't make the mistake I made with you. If you've moved on, Helen, why are you here? Not much for small talk. Are you okay? The reason I'm here is closure. I became really depressed when I had time alone to understand what I had done, what I had lost. I could not live with myself without telling you how sorry I am, and that I don't blame you one bit for what you did. I wanted to make sure you didn't believe any of it was your fault. I am praying that you don't hate me. I would like your forgiveness, but I understand that might be too much to ask. For what it's worth, I apologize again. I hope you, John and Kelsey, are happy. Well, that's it. Now I have closure. What about Kelsey? Were you planning to see her again? Will you be going for custody? I won't lie. Originally, I had hoped to get joint custody, at least. As time went on, I figured that if she has adjusted to her new family, it might do her more harm than good to see me, much less live with me. As good a kid as she is, I don't think I could handle her on my own without you to help. Seeing each other now would probably just work up emotions that would eat us both up for a long time. I do want to know how she is doing. Does she ever ask for me or wonder about me? How is she doing in school? None of the girls have asked much about you or Richie, but we certainly haven't forbidden them to do so. We said that you and Richie didn't want to be married to us anymore, but wanted our new family to be happy. So far, they've not said they wanted to return. That's not to say they don't periodically wonder how you two are doing. I feel pretty comfortable telling you that they have all adjusted well. Kelsey and my girls have become an inseparable trio of lovable monsters. I am homeschooling her along with my girls. She is testing at 2 grade levels above where she would be if she were in public school in most subjects. Helen, I can truly say that I love Kelsey as much as I do my 2 natural children. Helen had tears in her eyes. Thank you. Have you 2 gotten married? No, we weren't sure. Both of us were divorced. I thought that might be the case. Well, I have a wedding present for you too. It's a copy of each of your divorce certificates suitable for framing. Her attempts at humor seemed to be to keep herself from crying. Richie and I shared a divorce lawyer. Now you can become a legal family if you want. You'll notice that both Richie and I gave up total custody of our children to you too. You should be able to apply to adopt each other's kids. After pausing to watch Joan and I tear up at the good news, Helen said, I got to be going, and started heading towards the door. I reached out and took hold of her arm. Through copious tears, Helen whispered, Please, Carl, just let me go. I promise never to bother you again. If you ever need to let me know something about Kelsey, I still have my same cell phone number. I let go and she left. Joan went and got us both a glass of wine. We needed something to calm our nerves. We sat silently for a while. I looked at Joan, and after a few minutes, I saw her smile. So who proposes to whom? After careful thought, I proposed that the first one to reach the peak of excitement tonight should be the one who proposes. We both hurried to the bedroom. Helen drove far enough to not be seen from Kathleen Jones' house. She pulled over and let the sobs loose. She had been keeping inside. Helen surveyed her situation. Her funds had just about run out when the private investigator claimed success. The little funds she had with her was under $200. Her plan for meeting with Carl had 2 options. Helen's first choice was to find Carl not being able to handle Kelsey without her. Joan either would not be with him or their relationship had soured. Carl would forgive her. She would be able to get back into Carl's and Kelsey's life, never to leave again. It didn't matter. Even if they were married, her car was loaded with everything she still owned in anticipation of that choice coming to fruition. Option 2 was if she found Cal and Kelsey doing well, maybe he and Joan would be married, and maybe even have had a child of their own. In that case, she would say she was only there for closure and hand them the divorce decrees as a going-away present. Option 2 was the most difficult, but she had made plans just in case her closure plan required her to leave the new blended family and make it to the largest city nearby where she could start her life over without fear of running into them again. The Ziploc bag in the glove compartment contained Cal's wedding ring, her wedding rings and other jewelry that she no longer needed. Pawning them would give her stake money in a new life. Once through crying, Helen pulled back onto the road. Phoenix, here I come. Hey, maybe that's a sign from God. Maybe I can rise from the ashes too. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.